we speak the truth. Yeah, the truth favors the government, but that is not a problem. People need to know the truth. Jackson conflates three different responsibilities. Was the eviction lawful? Answer the question, listeners. 2, who had authority to execute the court order? Who had the authority? And number 3, what humanitarian assistance should be available to people displaced by it? Answer those questions. And Mr. Jackson moves rather quickly from the third question back to the first 2. Because a court order is not merely advice to the state. Because if a competent court has ordered possession to be given to a private party, the executive cannot say, we agree with the order, but we don't like its consequences. I wonder if you heard that. If the court gives an order that a man is to repossess his property, the executive, which is Dr. Chan, he is the Minister of National Security, cannot alter the order. The problem with Jamaica, I'm going to say it as raw as me can, is that our people are not properly developed educationally. They don't think logically. We are living in a society with a lot of half-wits, including some of them who are leading. And listen to me. We are teaching children in Jamaica to pass subjects. We need a reform because we have to get people to think critically, logically, and stop thinking with their feelings. You can't think with your heart, you know. The government can't say, oh, we don't like the consequences. What are the consequences of the court order? That the people will lose their house. The court knows it. Don't talk nonsense. The court knows that the consequences of this order means the house them are going to buck down. But how is the man to retrieve his property if the house is them not buck down? And the bucking down of the house carries with it humanitarian assistance that is going to be needed, but that don't mean that the order must not be carried out. You can, I hear people talking about George Davis singing about see people land and leave it alone, and they are criticizing. That's rubbish. You could have park your car in a one parking lot and leave it open with the key inside there, and a man take it drive away. Chase the police off of him and take back your car. Come on. The government can't say we don't like the consequences, so we will modify how it is carried out. Can't do that. That would create a constitutional problem if the executive start to meddle in the judiciary. We're going to have problems in Jamaica, and I want the people of Jamaica to understand that democracies function well where there is the observance of separation of powers. It is a fundamental principle that must be preserved. The principle of separation of power is important here. Courts determine legal rights. The executive administers and enforces the law. Politicians are not to get to substitute their humanitarian assistance for a judicial determination. Enforcing it humanely cannot mean don't enforce it. Mr. Jackson, you are talking nonsense. And if this is how the PNP thinks, it means this is how they would govern. And I am worried about that. I am worried about that type of society where a court order is interfered with by the executive. That cannot be allowed. So Mr. Jackson's formulation sounds difficult to disagree with. Lawful enforcement and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Of course they aren't. But the philosophical question, Mr. Jackson, is where compassion enters the equation. But when you want to win election, you have to spin. Suppose the court ordered, suppose the court has ordered an eviction. The police have to deal with the practical consequences of executing it. They can reasonably seek to avoid unnecessary violence, protect children, prevent disorder, allow lawful arrangements for removal of possession, etc. Which is why the police went in and arrested the men. Well, not arrest, detain them. But there is a boundary. Because if humanity means delaying, preventing, or materially altering the execution of the court order because the consequences are unpleasant, then the police have effectively acquired the power to suspend judicial decisions. You can't give the police you can't give the police judicial decisions, Mr. Jackson. That is not compassion. It is executive discretion overriding judicial authority. Repeat. That is not compassion. That is executive decision overriding judicial authority. The police must carry out the order. Compassion don't come in there so yet. The fact that vulnerable people live there don't change the legal obligation. Now you talk about, oh, there was a 3-month-old baby in a bath. That don't change the legal obligation. Those are separate arguments. The fact that vulnerable people live there no means that the court order must not be carried out. That don't have nothing to do with compassion. This invoking of children and women and elderly. Morally, it's a powerful rhetoric. That's powerful morally. But legally, however, vulnerability does not automatically. You could be vulnerable till what? Vulnerability don't create a right for you to remain on property that the court has determined you must leave. So why we don't take vulnerable people in our house? Why? Why we don't walk a road and pick up street people and put them up in our house? They're not vulnerable too. Huh? Just go up to the Victoria Jubilee Hospital, man. And all the ladies coming out there with cesarean section. Ask them if they're vulnerable. And carry them over your yard. Morally, that is a good argument. It's a political argument. You can make that. But legally, that is not an argument for the law. Vulnerability don't change the law. Because if it does, then enforcement of virtually every eviction could become discretionary. If the moral argument is to be used at Cooper's pen, then there is no eviction that the court could order. None, because every eviction you can put the moral argument on it. Everyone. Imagine a principal saying, the court ordered possession, but because children are present, the police should not enforce it. Because old people live there, can't enforce it. Well then, pack up the whole place of old people and make them stay. Nonsense. Those arguments, those arguments are for the weak. What happens when they are elderly people? What about the disabled? What about someone who has nowhere to go? These circumstances may justify social assistance. And it may even influence how you plan operationally. But they cannot by themselves nullify the underlying legal judgment. And this exposes an important distinction. Because compassion may qualify the manner in which the law is administered. Compassion does not determine whether the law applies. I want you to understand that. Compassion may qualify the manner in which the law is administered. It does not determine whether the law applies. It is very disappointing to hear this piece of rubbish coming out of the opposition.
The following is a release from the People's National Party Media Unit. The comments